Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Jeffrey?
Here.
Brubaker? Is he by phone?
He's on electronically.
Kimmons?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Kaiser?
Here.
Okay, thank you. If anyone has desire to address council on any issue this evening, you have the green cards that need to be filled out. And then when the time comes that you wish to address council, please present that to the clerk, and you will have a maximum of 4 minutes to address council. Moving on, is there any additions or corrections to the agenda this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Visitors are recognized, Mr. Crane? No? Yes? Okay. So we'll move on to communication requests. Number 1, presentation by Jason Zamkus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's a pleasure to be here and present to you some of the updates from last year's legislative session in Jeff City. I'll keep my comments brief, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But obviously, COVID impacted the legislative session last year. Certainly didn't impact the number of bills that were filed. There were over 1,900 bills that were filed. Of that, unfortunately, only about 1.5% of those were actually truly agreed to and landed on the governor's desk. That makes up about 52 bills total, of which 29 bills were 29 were actual general laws, 18 were appropriations measures, 4 were concurrent resolutions, which unless there's a presentment clause, they don't have the force and effect of law. And then finally, there was 1 joint resolution, which would go to the voters for final approval. I guess I'll start off with the bad news. Because so few bills passed, unfortunately, the legislature was not able to tackle the Wayfair issue, which is the sales and use tax treatment of internet transactions, which would greatly benefit municipal governments as well as the state coffers. Moving on to some of the more positive news, another measure that didn't make it to the governor's desk, but which would have, I believe, been very detrimental to municipal governments, was a measure that was pushed by the cable industry that would have repealed the municipal franchise fee agreements. And in the case of Moberly, I think at last count that was about $200,000 a year in loss in revenue. That bill never really made it out of the Senate, but there were some last-minute efforts when the legislature reconvened after their COVID break to try to get that done, and it died in the last, I think, 2 days of the regular session. Yet another success to kind of highlight, we were able to get a conveyance measure for the city of Moberly that would allow for the state to transfer ownership of the Moberly Area Correctional Facilities wastewater treatment plant to the city. I've had some conversations with the leadership over at the Department of Corrections as well as the Office of Administration. They're ready and willing to re-engage in negotiations with the city at a time that's convenient to your staff. Finally, following the legislative session, the budget committees have approved the authorization of low-income housing tax credits for the upcoming fiscal year. Ultimately, this will be left up to the Missouri Housing and Development Corporation for their final approval, but that's certainly a positive development, and it kind of frees the way for those elected officials and the few appointed members on the commission to go ahead and make that determination and hopefully allow for some affordable housing in your community and communities throughout the state. With that, I'd be happy to open it up to any questions that you might have.
Questions from the council? Mr. Kaiser.
In your opinion, what is the mood regarding the budget in Jeff City with the impact of COVID on the state and so on? Are they cutting back? Are they moving forward and optimistic, or what's the mood in Jeff City?
Well, they've already made 2 rounds of restrictions. The governor has the power to control state spending, and so there have been significant reductions to the appropriation authority that the governor's already been granted for the previous fiscal year. I think there's some cautious optimism that there will be a bounce back, but obviously with the numbers continuing to go up, I would stress the fact that it's cautious optimism. Certainly with regard to sales tax collections, we've already got nexus with vendors like Amazon and others. So in that regard, we are seeing an uptick in sales tax collections. The fact that we've pushed off income tax, we've actually extended the filing time, that actually pushes those collections into the following fiscal year, which creates a bit of a accounting issue, if you will. But I do think that overall there is some cautious optimism. But the governor's doing everything that he can to control the rate of spending to make sure that there's money there to pay the bills and keep the lights on.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much for your comments. All right, moving on, we'll move to public hearing, receipt of bids for the utility disconnect for residential properties. Mr. Crane?
Yes, Mayor, we received 1 bid for the disconnects for those utilities. It was from AG Plumbing for $550 per address. We're asking that these bids be accepted.
All right, any questions? Need a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to accept the bids. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Bids accepted. Moving on, ordinances and resolutions, number 3.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an ordinance accepting change order number 1 in the amount of $20,798.72 to the Morley Street Sidewalk Improvement Project.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading of the ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
I keep thinking I'm moving it down to the clerk. Yes, there's a motion and a seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? First reading. Mr. Crane, who's doing the readings tonight?
I'll do them. You want me to do them? Okay. An ordinance accepting change order number 1 in the amount of $20,798.72 to the Morley Street Sidewalk Improvement Project.
All right, you heard the first reading. Discussion about the ordinance. Hearing none, second reading.
An ordinance accepting change order number 1 in the amount of $20,798.72 to the Morley Street Sidewalk Improvement Project.
All right, you heard the second reading of the ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Roll call, please.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Brubaker?
Brubaker votes. All right,
He's having technical
Okay.
difficulties.
So-
carry on.
Okay. Kimmons?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Kaiser?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Ordinance passes. Moving on to number 4, ordinance.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an ordinance approving the intergovernmental cooperation agreement and providing further authority. I ask that it be read twice for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? First reading.
An ordinance approving an intergovernmental cooperation agreement and providing further authority.
All right, you've heard the first reading of the ordinance. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, second reading.
An ordinance approving an intergovernmental cooperation agreement and providing further authority.
All right, you've heard the second reading of the ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
It's been motioned and seconded by Mr. Kimmons. Roll call, please.
Kimmons?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Kaiser?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to number 5, an ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I have an ordinance approving a cooperative agreement for parking lot lease with GRD Mobley Real Estate LLC. I ask for it to be read twice for approval.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? First reading.
An ordinance approving a cooperative agreement for parking lot lease with GRD Moberly Real Estate LLC.
Questions about the ordinance? Mr. Kaiser.
Do we have an estimate of what it's going to cost for the parking lot? I didn't see it in here.
We do have an estimate, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry.
$1 million, 10,000, 20? Okay.
I guess my question, was that in closed session last week? Because I don't recall this
Well, it's
being,
been quite a few months ago.
okay,
It's been a long time ago, actually.
6 months ago at least, yeah.
all right.
Who is
it-
GRD specifically? Is it-
One of the medical marijuana dispensaries right there, Green Relief, something, Green Relief Development.
Okay.
All right. Second reading.
An ordinance approving a cooperative agreement for parking lot lease with GRD Moberly Real Estate LLC.
All right, you've heard the second reading of the ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Roll call, please.
Kimmons,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to number 6, a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase pump station control systems for the Heritage Hills Golf Course irrigation system.
All right, there's a motion for the reading of the ordinance, of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase pump station control systems for the Heritage Hills Golf Course irrigation system.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Any discussion of the resolution? Mr. Crane, I assume this is all part of what Parks and Rec, as the owner of the golf course, it comes out of their particular funding.
Yes, this will come out of the golf course budget. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Moving on to number 7, a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution authorizing the city manager of Moberly, Missouri to execute a managed service agreement with the Tech Shop LLC to provide information technology administrative services to the Moberly Police Department. I ask that it be read once for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second? Motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Motion carries. First and only reading.
A resolution authorizing the city manager of Moberly, Missouri to execute a managed services agreement with the Tech Shop LLC to provide information technology administrative services to the Moberly Police Department.
All right, you've heard the reading. Is there any discussion of the resolution? Hearing no questions, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Moving on to number 8, resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution accepting the bid and authorizing contracting with AG Plumbing LLC for residential utility disconnections for a 3-year period. I ask it be read once for consideration.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution accepting the bid of and authorizing contracting with AG Plumbing LLC for residential utility disconnections for a 3-year period.
Questions of the resolution? Hearing none. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes. Moving on to number 9, resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution of the City of Moberly, Missouri accepting and authorizing use of the Sugar Creek Lake Source Water Protection Plan.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution of the City of Moberly, Missouri, accepting and authorizing use of the Sugar Creek Lake Source Water Protection Plan.
All right, any discussion of the resolution? Should we get our books out?
Page 1.
I vote no.
it's
Any
only
questions of the resolution? All right, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Motion carries, resolution passed. Number 10, a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution approving a lease agreement with the Randolph County Democrats for property located at 220 West Reed Street and authorizing the city manager to execute the lease, and I ask that it be read once for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution approving a lease agreement with the Randolph County Democrats for property located at 220 West Reed Street and authorizing the city manager to execute the lease.
All right, you've heard the reading. Any discussion of the resolution? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
It's been motioned. Is there a second? Motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 11, a resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution supporting MBL Development Company's application for low-income tax credits for senior housing in Moberly, Missouri. Has to be read once for consideration.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. First and only reading.
A resolution supporting MBL Development Company's application for low-income tax credits for senior housing in Moberly, Missouri.
All right, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there any discussion of the resolution? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
I make that motion.
Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes. Moving on, number 12, a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an ordinance approving a cooperative purchase and development option agreement with Tannehill Apartments LP and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
All right, that's the motion for the reading of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution approving a cooperative purchase and development agreement with Tannehill Apartments LP and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
All right, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Kaiser, one at a time.
This is for the, I believe her name is Ken, I believe. I apologize, I can't remember her last name. My question, first question is that I understand that you bought the building for $8,500 here like less than a month ago. My question is, why did you choose not to buy the building?
I talked a little bit about last meeting. The commitment was, it was donated to a not-for-profit, and then when we got involved in it, we always said if this wasn't working and the not-for-profit Horizon Housing wanted to move the property on, that we would give the city the first right to do that. We thought it was appropriate with the school and the commitment that if the funding wasn't come, that the city should have it rather than a private enterprise. And so that's really living up to the commitment from the first year we submitted.
Okay. And then my second question, maybe for you and Brian, but during our work session, I asked a question about if we spent money fixing the building so it could stay in its current condition or through the winter and stuff like that. It was made, the comment was the city would be reimbursed for those costs. My question is, where is that at in this agreement?
That's not in this agreement. This agreement is just for a flat $20,000. So our thought was, we bought it for about 85. If there's any small carrying costs that we have to do between now and December, that roughly 12,000 would cover that.
Because we were talking significantly a lot more for the roof leaks, and obviously there's windows broken and doors and.
We haven't voted to fix those, though.
I'll just say if we get asked to, he made the comment that they would reimburse. I'm just asking where that is in the agreement.
I can make a comment there. if you
Sure.
like. I would suggest that if you decide that something needs to be done, and we all would, agree, we would then agree to, the attorney could draft an agreement to increase the price for that amount, and I will tell you that we will execute that, and that would be then put into the price of the property. So if something did come up that was unexpected in this hopefully fairly short period of time, then you would know that we would pick up that expense. Because that is typical of what we have in properties like this that we might buy, or sometimes even under option, where the owner requires us to make improvements to maintain the property.
Anyone else? Mr. Davis?
Yes, Mr. Sanders, are we anticipating having to do anything in the next 5 months to this building?
I think they've had roofing people look at it and say that, the damage that's there is there, so, I mean, unless we wanted to close it off, I think it's fairly well closed off right now to the public, and, I don't think putting a roof or anything on right now would save any more expense than would be required 5 months down the road.
Okay, the reason I'm asking and saying 5 months isn't that approximately the time length that you'll need to determine where you're going to get the tax credits or not?
Correct. We presume MHTC will approve by December who gets the tax credits for 2020.
Thank you.
No others? All right, you've heard all the discussion. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed, motion carries. Moving on to number 13, a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution supporting Tannehill Apartments LP application for low-income tax credits for senior housing in Moberly, Missouri. I ask that it be read once for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? First reading.
A resolution expressing support for Tannehill Apartments LP intended application for low-income tax credits.
All right, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Any further discussion? Mr. Williams? Not this one?
Mr. Mayor and
Please state your name and address,
Brian-
please.
Brian Williams. Address is 629 West End Place, Moberly, Missouri. I'm here on behalf of the Tannehill Project to speak from Caring Community, one of the partners that was approached maybe about a year ago in regard to the project. It started out speaking about our farmers market and a partnership to provide boxes for the residents who maybe by the end of the month may run low for food security, and the opportunity to partner with our agency through the market to provide those. And as the conversation went, we had an opportunity to talk about extended services that could be provided there through our community health worker program, which would connect residents with other services other than just food. Could be health services, mental health, counseling, all kind of a gamut of services that would be made available for them. In addition to that, we talked about an opportunity for spacing for a free clinic that would be accessible not only for those residents, but for individuals on the west side of town who could not access services, maybe out to the health department or other services for health throughout our community. So that was, we had been looking for maybe a year prior, a location to put a free clinic in the community, preferably downtown, once again, for accessibility. So the opportunity to extend the services beyond housing now went into an opportunity to provide clinical services for low-income individuals. Aside from that, we have the Magic City Express Transportation, which has been in operation for over 20-plus years in the community, which would also provide transportation services. So our push, and what our community advocates who have been working in the West End side, our push is that housing alone is good, but when you can combine housing with other systems, such as medical health system, social services, transportation, education, working with the MACC to provide those seniors with technology training. I know for sure my mom, who's 93-year-old, she does 3 Zooms a week. So there would be opportunity for even education to be brought in. Plus, you're in an area that you have, 8 churches for individuals who want to access those services. So our push and our endorsement to see the Tanny Hill Apartment Project come is because it's a multi-systems program. It's not just about housing and providing housing services, but you have 5 to 6, 7 other systems working together to give more comprehensive services available to those who live there. And plus, being West End, I mean, everyone knows, there's no secret, West End is one of the least developed communities in our community, and to have an opportunity to have a new development project on the West End would be dynamic. And finally, there's an affinity for a lot of people in this community to that building, the front of that building. I myself attended junior high there several years ago. Can't recall how many, but so there's a lot of residents who that particular building they have an affinity to. So yeah, new would be great. All new would be great, but having that as a part is the enmeshing of our history with our future. And so we support it fully, and I hope the council would, consideration for the Tanny Hill project to be placed downtown.
All right, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Anyone else? Sir, please come forward.
Thank you for hearing what I got to say here. My name's Jerry Penninger. I live at 1369 Lantern Point on the south end of Williams.
Yes, sir.
And what I would like to see if you consider what's called a quiet zone from Coach Street to Urbandale. There's 6 crossings, and the train blows its whistle on every crossing for a total of 15 seconds. So by the time it gets to the end, it never shuts up to Urbandale, and come in both directions. And it can be done because I was in South Missouri this year, and down at Republic, Missouri, they have the signs up, no horns, and they don't blow the train whistles when they come through. And this is the only way I knew to approach this. I didn't know what else to do, because the only way they'll do is listen to a city. They won't listen to an individual to get it done. And I didn't know where to go from here, so I thought I'd come to the council meeting.
Well, I appreciate that. At this point, we're in discussion about the Tanner Hill project, so that would have been to come from the council, but that's okay.
Okay.
And I don't know the answer. I'm sure Mr. Crane can maybe get you an answer about what those kind of things are, but I don't think we're going to change the railroad after so many 100 years.
No, I don't mean the railroad, just from blowing the horn.
Well, I understand.
But it's not a federal law like I thought it was.
Sure.
It's not.
Okay.
Mayor, could I speak?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Sir, I've been an engineer for 49 years and recently retired, but we did that in several locations. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my voice, but
Sure.
It doesn't work out. There are locations, and it is up to this municipal
Yes.
to create that.
Correct.
A great example is Springfield, Illinois. It was 40 mile an hour through there, numerous crossings. We did a quiet zone through there, and I think we hit 25 cars in the first month.
You mean they went around the crossings that was
Yes,
there?
it's all gated, and so I mean, there's some people, I know the inconvenience of the noise out there, and and I agree with you, but I would be very reluctant to do a quiet zone. It's just too dangerous.
Okay, that's why I brought it to
All right,
you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so is there any further discussion about the Tannehill support?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Since we have Mr. Zembis here, and he spoke on the tax credits, I was wondering if there was, at the last meeting, there was some conflicting ideas of whether having two applications for tax credits out of the same city would diminish our chances of either one of them getting them. Jason, do you have an opinion on that, or?
Let me preface this by saying I'd be more than happy to reach out to the executive director of the Missouri Housing Development Commission to get his take on it, because ultimately his vote's going to sway this, not mine. But it's been my experience in the past, and I've got an economic development background, having worked for the Department of Economic Development and worked closely with MHDC. My sense, and you know, the administration has changed since I worked in this capacity, but I think having two projects that the city council could get behind, I think shows a greater need for those type of housing projects in the community. And if you've got two projects up there, and I know one has not been successful over the course of the last 7 years, and you've got another developer who I think has shown some continued success in this area, by showing a greater demand, a greater need at the community level, I would think that the commission would want to at least give you one of the two projects. You know, they're going to want to try to address some of that need, maybe not all of it, but if you just had the one up there, I guess what I should say is I don't see there being a detriment at this point to having two projects that the city supports. And again, I'd be happy to reach out to MHDC staff and their executive director to get a better sense of how they would feel about that. But the more of a demand that you can show, the more of a need you can show, I think the more likely you are to win at least one of the awards.
All right, thank you.
Is it having two,
Oh,
excuse me,
Mr. Kimmons? Oh, I thought you had a question. All right, go ahead.
is having two going to decrease the odds of either one of them getting it?
My own personal opinion, and based on what I've seen in the past, I would think that it would increase the likelihood of one of them getting it, because you're showing a greater community need. But again, I'd be more than happy to reach out to Kip Stetzler at MHDC and Megan Word and some of their staff and see if, for some reason, that's no longer the case.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, but I mean, we're going to have to approve this or disapprove it tonight. But I would, going forward, if the situation arises, I'd like to know the answer to that too. So,
I'd be happy to get you that
Appreciate
answer.
thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passed. Moving to number 14, a resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution authorizing the city manager to issue a request for proposals for the adaptive reuse of the Mobley Junior High School building. Ask it be read once for consideration.
All right, you've heard the motion for the reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? First and only reading.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to issue a request for proposals for the adaptive reuse of the Moberly Junior High School building.
All right, discussion of the resolution. Anything else you want to expound on there, Mr. Crane? I think you've got a timeline in the packet about when that would go through the process and so on.
Yeah, we hope that would, proposals would be reviewed and hopefully decided on just after the MHDC decides what the tax credit allocation will be for this year.
Okay? Mr. Kaiser.
So now that we've committed the building to another project for the next 6 months, why would a developer want to respond to this RFP and spend the money that it costs to respond to an RFP, knowing that this is already committed to another project?
That's the risk.
Further questions?
I would probably add that whether they respond now or we wait till after it's decided on the junior high low-income tax credit project, we've really lost nothing. So we could reissue it again in December if we wanted to.
My concern is whether we'll get responses knowing that it's committed to something else. And we've now passed an ordinance that says that we're in support of another project. How serious are they going to take this RFP is my.
And it's typical that on any RFP that's issued, that there is always a clause that says we may accept or reject anything that's submitted. So there's always that risk.
Well, there's also the track record of how many times that the other has not been successful. So that has to be weighed into that risk of how much or how little work to do to start an RFP.
And typically because this was an issue that we weren't really sure what direction the council was going to go on, we put this on the agenda. The council could wait until after that for the reasons you said, or they can issue it now. So it's totally up to what the council would like to do in this situation.
Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
There's a motion, and then there's a second.
Second.
No, Mr. Kimmons had the second. Oh, Mr. Kaiser had the motion. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes. Number 15, a resolution appropriating money out of the treasury of the city of Moberly.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution appropriating money out of the treasury of the city of Moberly, Missouri in the amount of $646,000, $646,869.12.
All right, you've heard the motion for the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Motioned and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
First and only reading.
A resolution appropriating money out of the treasury of the city of Moberly, Missouri.
I hereby certify that there is sufficient money standing to the credit of the city of Moberly, Missouri, unappropriated in the several funds covered by this resolution to meet the requirement of this resolution. Submitted Gregory L. Hodge, City Treasurer. Any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's motioned and seconded. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, I believe we're on official reports. Anything else to come in front of the council? Anyone else wishes to address council as to issues from tonight's meeting or anything else? All right, hearing none at this point, we'll move on to 16, consideration for approval of new and renewal liquor applications.
Okay, we have 2 renewals, Lucky's and Pizza Works, and they have the necessary signatures. We do have an application from D'Oblongo, located at 2002 Silva Lane. They have submitted their application, but they do not have all the necessary signatures. They plan on opening this Wednesday, and if the council wishes, you could approve their application pending the necessary signatures.
All right, I'm sorry, who again was it?
The Mexican restaurant
Oh,
that's
okay.
moving to the,
Mr. Crane, what's your pleasure?
Yes, this would be customary that as long as they submit I think they're waiting on some staff signatures, if that's right. And
That's correct.
It would be customary for,
Okay.
if you'd like to see them open up on Wednesday, we can get those signatures taken care of.
I would entertain a motion for approval under that condition. Is there a motion to that effect? Motion to that effect, is there a second? Motion and seconded, all those in favor signify by aye. Motion carries. Next. Is that the only one you have?
And the two, yes, that's it.
Well, we just
We
did
have
the one
like-
conditionally, so if you want the other one, we'll
The other,
approve.
the other two are Lucky's and Pizza Works, and they have the necessary signatures.
Okay, so we want a motion to approve those two then. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
So that's that. And I think that's it. Anything else to come in front of the council one last time? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to work session followed by closed session. There's a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Kaiser. Roll call, please.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Kimmons?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Kaiser?
All right. We are adjourned from the regular session of Mobley City Council. And we will go ahead and open the work session and move to that agenda. And we'll start off with number one, appointment to the Mobley, Missouri Public Building Corporation.
Yes, Mayor, we have one member, John Davis, whose term expires in October. We've reached out to Mr. Davis. He is willing to serve another term. We currently have no other applications on file.
All right, discussion of the candidate.
Good last name.
All right, so is that a motion for approval?
Yes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. And we'll move that on to the next meeting. Moving on to number two, request to hold 2020 Veterans Day Parade.
Yes, Mayor, this is the annual Veterans Day Parade, November 14th this year at 1 o'clock. It will start at Johnson and Adams and go down Reed Street and then turn down North Clark and disperse. Public Safety has reviewed this and is recommending it be moved forward for approval.
All right. Any questions about the Veterans Day Parade? Anybody opposed? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I assume where are we at on the COVID virus problem with the parade? Is it going to pose any social distancing problems?
Currently, the city doesn't have any policy on any events, but the health department has still recommends face masks and social distancing at any gatherings.
When the railroad days happened in June, I forgot exactly how we did it, but did we not make that contingent on them complying with all the health department and state county?
Yeah, currently the letter we send out now has that disclaimer in it.
I would suggest that we do the same with this, that if there's still COVID virus restrictions out there by any of the agencies, that we make them comply with that, make sure that they comply with that. Hopefully by November, we won't have.
I'll have to maybe put some language in the approval in the meeting when we do the resolution. Okay, we'll move that forward. Moving on to number three, the request to hold the homecoming parade.
Yes, this request was received and Public Safety's reviewed it. It is starting about the same spot at Johnson and Adams, but this one will go down Reed Street, then back up Clark, and then down Coach Street, so it'll make a loop downtown.
All right. Anyone opposed to moving that forward?
No, but I like the same verbiage or language being used as well.
All right, we'll move that forward. Moving on, a resolution approving a lease.
Yes, this lease is the same as the Toys for Tots lease from last year. This building's, this is the suite at 218 West Reed Street, where they held their activities for dispersing and collecting and qualifying people for the Toys for Tots program. Staff's reviewed this and is recommending approval.
Comments, anyone?
Brian, I noticed in there that, and I think I understood that they're going to be paying all the utilities for those 3 months.
No, I think those are all shared utilities. So
I I thought the lease, maybe it was for the Democratic Club next door. But I thought it said in there they'd be responsible for all utilities, including cable and internet.
Anything like that, yeah.
I was
But
just
the-
wondering how that would work with just a 3-month, October, November, and December.
They typically don't use those utilities. The water and sewer are all combined, and I believe the utilities are combined in that building too. So we're basically operating that without any revenue.
Do we need to change the lease to say that, specify that we will cover it, or is that an issue?
We'll review the lease. I don't have it up in front of me right
Sure.
now. Do you have
Just-
it up by chance? Yeah, we can clean that language up. That's just talking about any internet or
We can move it forward, and if the language in the resolution
Yeah,
isn't
I
good,
just
you
pointed
can
out
vote
it's not a
against it.
big issue.
Okay,
I'm not opposed to them renting it or leasing it.
all right. Anyone else? Move that forward. Proposal from TNT Golf Car.
Troy Bach's going to cover this one.
Mr. Bach.
So essentially, we had 40 carts leased, 22 carts owned. What this does is it takes, we'll end up either trading or selling. We'll have that, the 22, we'll have that before you, a final answer on that at the next meeting. But what we're going to do is essentially rebuild the lease into a 4-year lease that includes all 60. We'll go from 62 to 60. They'll all be on a lease. Maintenance is included in that lease. Whenever the carts are taken out for maintenance, we get loaners, so we'll reduce the downtime we have right now on the carts we own, which are in tough shape maintenance-wise.
So when will that be for the next golf season, or are you talking about getting them now at the end of the season?
We'd be looking at getting them this fall, is my understanding. They'll waive the last payment this year in October. The payments for the new lease would actually start in 2021.
Okay.
Will we
Question.
have them by September? I know September was a very busy month for tournaments. It looks like every week's got a tournament.
I'll have to verify that before the next meeting. I'm not sure, I doubt we'd have them that soon, but I'll verify the timeline.
Just the tournaments where they're running short on
Yeah.
cards. So, I did the math, and maybe it may be off, but it seemed like we had to, it came out to about $600 a cart per year, and if they're getting $12, or around $12, they'd have to run it like 50 times to get the money out of the year, which is easily done. I mean, does that sound like my math's close?
I'd have to check the math, but I know right now it's more advantageous to do this because they not only need it for tournaments, but regular play in their peak period. So it's more advantageous going this route than having to lease out at $40 a cart, not only for tournaments, but their regular days. Because essentially with the 22 that are owned, we only have 40 on the lease that are, that we can be sure are usable.
What do you're using the 10 motorized carts as a trade-in? Is that basically what we're doing?
Yeah, we actually own 12 gas. So that's one thing we're going to clarify with this company. They're only factoring in 10 for trade-in. So we're going to verify before the next meeting if they're actually just leaving us 2 of them that we'll end up selling, or if they intended to have 12 in the trade-in.
How long is the lease?
It's a 4-year.
4 years, so it's locked in at this price?
It'll go through 2024.
Okay.
Do we have a estimate of what these 10 or 12 carts are worth?
No, because it depends on the maintenance and where you sell it. So anywhere from 1 to 2,000 is typically what they go for. It's rare you would get 2,000 given the maintenance issues. I would note that right now we're paying $43.50, 6 payments of $43.50 a year. By unfolding another, essentially increasing the lease cards by 50%, we're going from $43.50 to $6,000 for those 6 payments.
Okay.
So it's going to be advantageous for us, not only financially, but having the carts we can depend on.
All right, anyone opposed to moving that forward? All right, thank you, Mr. Bach. Moving on to number 6, appointment to the Housing Authority Board.
I've got that one. So Robert Edwards unfortunately passed away, and his term expires in October of 2020. The Housing Authority has submitted the name of Dennis Stevenson to complete his term on the board, which expires October 2020.
Okay. Questions? Anybody opposed to moving that forward? All right, then we'll move that name forward for approval. Move on to number 7, text amendment for mobile food vendors.
This is an ordinance that would put in some place some guidelines for our ordinances. We don't currently, when we passed our regulations in 2012, it didn't really have anything in the regulations for food trucks. Since that time, they've implemented some regulations, and so we've taken that and also met with the communities to see what they've done as far as guidelines on that, and put together a package for what you're seeing in front of you for planning and zoning to review, and so they have reviewed that and approved it. The key things, I think, there's several things that talk about type of power requirements and hookups and connections and distances, but the main things I think that'll be a factor are locate on an appropriate hard surface that's at least 100 feet away from the front door of a lawfully established eating place, and parking of mobile food trucks shall not be operated overnight, parking for more than 2 nights in a 48-hour period. And that would be like outside of special events that are approved by council, of course. And then mobile food trucks are limited to operating on a single lot for 14 consecutive days, meaning they have to leave at night and come back the next day. They could be there 14 consecutive days, not more than 60 days in a calendar year. So those are probably the main 3 things it would be impacting. But what we would want is to make sure that food trucks aren't designed or set up to be year-round at one location. They're mobile food vehicles. And so that's just trying to put some guidelines in place to make them that way.
This was passed by the Planning and Zoning, correct?
Correct.
Questions, anyone? Mr. Davis.
Mr. Sanders, I see H provides it. I'm assuming it's the owner of the lot will have to provide toilet facilities to the mobile food truck within 500 feet of the vehicle. Would this preclude the food trucks and vendors from being on Orscheln's parking lot?
You know, they could do porta potties, or I don't know if they have access to the store, or what the circumstances are there, with what their arrangement is with the store. I think they have restrooms open to the public in there.
I believe so, but I mean, I'm concerned about it being 500 feet from the, I don't see any reason for us to stop them from being on that. That seems to be a very popular spot for vendors. And
Yeah, and that's not the goal of this. I mean, just like they ask on the days, I mean, if there's restrooms on site like that, I mean, if it was 600 feet to that on the same property like that, that wouldn't be something that we would stop. It's just, and just like on the days, you know, we're not going to have somebody out there counting
Sure.
if it's 14 days or 15 days. I mean, if it becomes a problem, this would give us some guidelines to fall back on.
Okay.
But we can edit that if you feel like we need to.
I mean, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be a problem down the road, that we weren't going to try to say they couldn't be on that parking lot or.
If there were restrooms provided, like, it's just like to have reasonable access to restrooms. That's kind of what this segment is for, is to make sure there are some kind of reasonable access to restrooms within a, you know, so, and that's on the same property, so I think that would be considered very reasonable.
All right, anyone else? Anyone opposed to moving that forward? Okay, without opposition, that will move forward, and we'll move on to an ordinance establishing the tax levy for the city of Moberly.
Yes, Mayor, we received back from the state auditor our certification letter for the 2020 tax rate. The General Revenue Taxing Authority's proposed rate is .7251, and Parks and Recreation is .3365. And this does comply with Missouri's law.
All right. Questions? So that will be in the form of a resolution at the next meeting?
Can't remember.
Or when, do
It's a
we have to have a
ordinance.
hearing about it?
It's a hearing and a ordinance, isn't it? Yeah, ordinance.
Okay. Anyone opposed to moving that forward? All right, hearing none, that will move forward. Last item, discussion of city channel through charter.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we've been discussing the city channel that we currently have provided through our cable company, Charter Spectrum. We talked about this a while back with the council, and there was a desire to try to get some video services for government meetings and functions. We checked into the city channel through Charter, and it requires quite a bit of investment to get their line into our building upgraded. And they're willing to do that and have to do that, but we also have to provide enough content to meet the statutory requirements, which averages out to be about 10 hours per week. Staff's been reviewing how many meetings we have and how much resources we have available to capture those 10 hours per week. And we do have some concerns about being able to fulfill that requirements. We wanted to meet with you all before we go down the road of having Charter continue to provide that services. We've had quite a bit of success with our online social media platforms, posting meetings and content there. So if the council does want us to look at continuing that relationship with Charter and having it on the TV channel through Charter Spectrum, we'll need to develop a pretty good budget and programming list to provide those services.
Is there any way that you can include the school board meetings as part of that content, even though it's a different location?
No, it's government only. Schools have their own channel, and they've already said they don't want their channel anymore. So they have an education channel. And I don't know if they've ever used it in the past, but for at least the last 5 years, the school has never.
I mean, that's typically what communities have, is school board, and then city council, and then county commission.
And right
Imagine
now,
that.
we can only submit on our government channel for government functions for the city of Moberly.
Well, I wouldn't mind seeing more information. If that's
So
what
you
you're
wanna see a
asking.
budget and
Yeah.
scope of work? Okay.
Anyone else?
We'd be just duplicating what we do on the website, the city website.
To a certain degree, but we don't come anywhere close to 10 hours a week of new content. It's got to be new content.
Well, you're probably, talking about a higher level of, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Quality of the broadcast.
But it would only be,
10 hours of,
would it
Mr.
only be
Mr.
accessible for people that have Spectrum?
Charter, yeah.
Mr. Kaiser?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious as well. I know in Kansas City, the cable company had a channel, and it was very beneficial to watch the city council meetings and so on. So I'm a fan of it, but I definitely agree. Here, the last few months, we've been doing the online thing. It's been very popular. I'd like to see a budget comparison of the two options of stepping up our production quality here, not taking anything away from what we've done so far, but what would it cost to step it up? Because that way it's not limited to just Charter customers. We'd have the Finks and the Sockets and so on, and do a comparison. But I love the access into our council.
And there's opportunities to simulcast. So basically, what's on Charter also gets put on another website. So there's from a technology perspective, there's opportunities. It's just
Yeah.
the
Well, you're talking about
amount of
other,
staff time to produce.
other boards and
10 hours.
commissions. You have Park and Rec, you could have them on, you have any of those committees that function in the community, you could
Yeah.
have them on. And I know the city that I watched before, they would show their city council meeting more than once. It wasn't just a live one. They
Well,
had it and then they would play it so many times.
Yeah,
and-
and you can do that, but you only get credit for it only a few times before it's
I
not
know.
considered new content. So I think it's really, the statute reads 40 hours. But when you look at what the definition of new content is, you can replay. So when you look at the replay content, it gets it down to about 10 hours of new production.
years ago when we looked at this, the time and effort and money to put together 10 hours of broadcasting, just simply the value wasn't there. I mean, you're talking about a lot of work, a full-time employee, or to even manage that.
Yeah, and I mean, at this meeting, for example, we have 2 people here dedicated to just working the technology that's needed to broadcast it on Facebook. So if we're doing production quality on a TV channel and doing, editing and some other things, you're right. Well, the budget will show that we'll probably need to add somebody to
Well,
focus just on that.
I mean, we're not the first city in the Moberly, in Missouri to do this, so maybe we should be talking to some of the other municipalities that do this and see how, number one, they fund it and what they spend and how they make it efficient, otherwise they wouldn't do it.
We have, and there's only a few big towns that still do it. All the smaller towns that are doing it our size have gone to just putting stuff on social media type platforms or YouTube channels, and aren't doing the production grade Charter Spectrum cable.
Well, I mean, looking at it's not gonna hurt anything, but we can decide at that point. But anyone else comments? Okay, so no problem moving that forward. That will move forward to the next meeting. That concludes what we have for the work session agenda, unless there's something or someone that else needs to be addressed for the work session. If not, Mr. Crane, I'd like to have closed session in chamber. So, yeah, so we clear the chamber after this is over. And is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Mr. Davis.
All in favor signify by aye. Okay, we are adjourned.